When will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied.
If we are to honor and love Martin Luther King, there are some things we must know. We first of all must be clear about who he was. Because the best way to destroy and distort the legacy and message of a prophet is to revision them as either being perfect or popular. Truth is, you really don't honor prophets with celebrations. Prophets trouble us all. You honor prophets by going to the place where they died, reaching down in the blood and picking up whatever they were working on and carrying it the next mile of the way.
We must also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
And what I thought is very important, you and I know that Brother Martin gets deodorized every January. He gets sanitized and sterilized every January.
Santa Clausified.
Yeah, they Santa Clausified it, brother.
What do you mean by that?
Turn him into an old man with a smile, toys in his bag, handing out gifts. Everybody got a smile on their face, and the FBI is saying, he's the most dangerous man in America. And other black leaders are saying when they're trying to organize poor people and critiques of Vietnam put forward with such power, he's now betraying the movement. He's un-American. He's a traitor to the country and so forth. And so what does Martin do? He says, you never knew me. You never knew me. I'm called to love babies in Vietnam, babies in Appalachia, babies in South Side of Chicago, babies in Harlem, babies in Ethiopia. I'm a Christian minister. For me, justice is what love looks like in public, just like tenderness is what love feels like in private. That's Martin King.
Estimated that we spend $322,000 for each enemy we kill in Vietnam, while we spend in the so-called war on poverty in America only about $53 for each person classified as poor.
Martin King preached upon the foundation of civil disobedience, and he called for a movement to challenge the demons of Jim Crow. His preaching confronted racism, the evil of racism and poverty and war, not only within the quarantine of a sanctuary and not only at a ceremony, because they wouldn't have killed him for that, but he preached and acted in the streets of the nation. And when he dared to challenge, I got to tell the truth, when he dared to challenge racism and poverty and militarism together and call all of those evils and to challenge America, he lost his open invitation to the White House. Civil rights organizations came out against him, black ones. Fellow preachers walked away from him. And when he started the Poor People's Campaign, there were many people who did not stand with him. They came to his funeral because we have a dangerous reality in the existential lives of our people, that somehow we love the tombs of the prophets. We love the tombs of the prophets, but we do not love the prophets when they are alive.
America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will.
You know, Dr. King, one of the last things he did in his life was the poor people's movement.
Absolutely. That's right.
And people don't want to talk about that. He went to Memphis with the striking garbage workers, you know, for the least of these. And Micah 6:8 comes to mind, Dr. West. What does the Lord require of you? And we have so many people who talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk.
The other thing I want you to understand is this, that it didn't cost the nation 1 penny to integrate lunch counters. It didn't cost the nation 1 penny to guarantee the right to vote. But now we are dealing with issues that cannot be solved without the nation spending billions of dollars and undergoing a radical redistribution of economic power. Yes.
To preach in the tradition of Martin Luther King is to agitate, and yes, it is to separate from injustice, and it is not just some cute love that says everybody loves everybody. It is the kind of love that dares to tell the truth about injustice. And if you're not going to deal with that part of Dr. King, then leave him alone. So when we remember Dr. King, it's not enough to talk about celebration or his orator. And it's not enough to say, well, Dr. King just wanted everybody to come together. No, he didn't. He wanted folk to change. Just coming together, sitting in the real same room, and then letting the injustice stay like it is not the unity.
We read one day, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if a man doesn't have a job or an income, he has neither life nor liberty and the possibility for the pursuit of happiness. He merely exists.
We have to stop lying to ourselves. We have to stop picking his bones clean and confront what he actually called us to be. When we celebrate Dr. King, we think about the Montgomery bus boycott, and we tell that story from the bus boycott to the I Have a Dream speech and the March on Washington. And it's part of a standard story we tell ourselves about the Black freedom struggle that is accepted by mainstream society. It fixes Dr. King in one place because he's palatable there, because he's talking about love. By the time King is murdered, he's still talking about love. He was a preacher after all. But he's speaking to the three evils: the peril of militarism, the effects of capitalism, and of course, the ongoing sin of racism. Dr. King was also engaged in a radical politics because he understood that radical change was necessary if the country was actually going to be saved. There's this sense in which Dr. King has always invoked the Dr. King of 1963, the Dr. King of 62, 61, the Dr. King of the Montgomery bus boycott, in order to constrain the scope and extent of our politics. But when we talk about Dr. King of 68, when he's talking about a fundamental reordering of our economic reality, when he's thinking about and trying to organize a poor people's campaign, where he's going to bring poor people from around the country, black people, brown people, white people from around the country, to build a tent city in Washington, D.C., to bring to the fore the situation, the circumstance of poor people around the country. That's not the Dr. King of I Have a Dream. That's the Dr. King who understood that we needed a radical act of civil disobedience to jar the conscience of the nation.
All labor has dignity. Yes. But you are doing another thing. You are reminding not only Memphis, but you are reminding the nation that it is a crime for people to live in this rich nation and receive starvation wages.
people, everybody comes to say they love Dr. King. Corporations come. They'll even buy you a little breakfast now. And politicians come. Somebody like Mike Pence will take a quote from Dr. King, doesn't even know what it means. Y'all saw that? He said one of my favorite quotes is when Dr. King said, make real the promises of democracy, and that's what Mr. Trump is trying to do with his wall. Are you nuts? I mean, that ain't an anti-Republican thing, that's just foolish. When Dr. King said, make real the promise of democracy, he was talking about undoing racism and fighting for labor rights and living wages. So politicians can't say they love Dr. King and how he stood for love and unity, but then you deny and refuse to support his agenda. Right, Governor? I mean, since you came, right, Congressman? So, let me show you what I mean, Governor. Dr. King would not have been for a wall. And the hurting, how many of y'all are not against a wall? Everybody here that's not against the wall, politicians, everybody, and will tell Donald Trump, you don't need to be building a wall to separate people. We need to be spending money to give people health care. Stand on your feet. Now, anybody that doesn't stand on your feet, you get the seat. Wait a minute. How many folk in here believe, like Dr. King, that everybody ought to have what Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican, asked for 100 years ago, and that's your health care for every citizen? Everybody believes that. Stand up. Now, if you can't stand up for that, then don't say you love Dr. King.
And this is what we are faced with. And this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington, in this campaign, we're coming to get our check.
We have been sold a load of crock. We have been given a pretty little compartment to put Dr. King in that says, no matter how much you hurt, no matter how much we stigmatize you, no matter how much we traumatize you, we beat you, you're as radical as you can go as nonviolence, and that's about where it is. It never talks about the social justice aspect of Dr. King. He was killed because he spoke against a military-industrial complex. He was killed because he believed in the fairness and equity of all men. He was killed because he had the courage to say it, and he had the courage to demand it out of corporations. The most dangerous part of what Dr. King really said in the end was he fears that the white radical in the South is not the problem, but the white moderate who is about order over justice.
First, I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate.